I'm saying that trans men are men and should be treated as men.
Yes, but you don't...
As are trans women are women and should be treated as women.
Fine. But you don't only mean they should be treated as men. You mean they are literally men, and therefore should be treated as men, don't you?
Hi, my name is Anne McElhenney.
And I'm Phelan McAleer.
We're married, by the way, even though my name is Anne McElhenney and Phelan's name is Phelan McAleer. That's another story for another day. Actually, somebody wrote, by the way, recently and said they wanted to know how we met. I'm not sure we'll do that just today. Anyway,
Yes.
Welcome to the Anne and Phelan Scoop. Today, this show is coming out on February the 1st, which is our dear friend Andrew Breitbart's birthday. He'd have been 54 if he was alive today.
Wow.
And we thought what we'd do is, before we start the show, we'd actually show a clip of just Andrew being fabulous and being fabulous Andrew, explaining actually why he became a conservative.
Yeah, Andrew, by the way, is the reason we're in Los Angeles.
Yep.
We met him in DC. We came out here and he was... No, we didn't meet him. We came out here, we met him. First night we were in LA and he said, you got to stay in LA, so we're here. And then he lent us his car for a few weeks.
It was the least generous thing he ever did for us. He was a very good friend and a great person to know, and it's just extraordinarily sad that he's gone. But here's Andrew in full flight explaining what significant moment in his life changed his politics forever.
In your book, you talk about one of those life-changing moments. You're watching the Justice Thomas, Anita Hill hearings. What happens to Andrew Breitbart?
Well, I just graduated from college, and I started watching the hearings, wanting to root for the takedown of Clarence Thomas. I watched the television set, and the television set told me that this was a bad man, and the newspapers told me that he was a bad man. I remember Eleanor Smeal, I remember Patricia Schroeder walking up the steps, these ladies, and saying, this guy, we're going to take a stand against this guy for sexual harassment, serial sexual harassment. So I watched these hearings like a spectator who wanted to see somebody mauled, like lions mauling, Romans. And I watched day one, I watched day two, I watched the entire thing. I went from wanting him to be taken down to wondering, where's the beef? What's going on here? I don't understand what I'm watching here. I don't understand the color commentary that's on the screen where they're saying, oh, this is outrageous. And I didn't understand the bumper stickers that were going by me on the street saying, I believe Anita. I said, I believe Anita what? What's going on here? I don't understand what's going on here. Everything that I knew, everything that I picked up at college in my American studies, cultural Marxist, oppressor, oppressed, black people are always right, white people are always wrong. I didn't understand how Ted Kennedy, the Ted Kennedy of Chappaquiddick fame, how Howard Metzenbaum, Joe Biden, a series of white privileged men could sit in judgment of this man who was the son of grandparents who were sharecroppers who raised him, and he went to Yale Law School. He did everything right, including allowing for Anita Hill to rise through the ranks of the legal profession, through jobs with him, where she never had a sexual relationship with him at all. He did nothing untoward.
I would love to have heard his take on the last 10 years or 6 years or whatever.
Yes, he'd have a lot of really interesting things to say about all of that.
A lot of joyful things. He was a happy warrior.
Very happy warrior. Okay, Phelan, what else is happening in the show today?
We look at Tolerant Hollywood, how Tolerant Hollywood, Diverse Hollywood, tries to make it illegal to be nominated for one of their own awards. That's if you're white. But, of course, you can kill a female director if you are a white actor called Baldwin.
There you go. And we bring you the most funded anti-fossil fuel NGO that you've never heard of. And Trans Madness, we bring you a taste of the crazy that's being normalised.
You will love that.
You will love that.
Yeah,
a little bit of a treat.
The Trans Madness story is just superb.
Yes. And there was another shooting in LA this past weekend.
But you didn't hear about, by the way.
I'm sure you didn't hear about. But the LA Times crack reporter on the scene noticed something really shocking.
And it wasn't the 3 dead bodies.
And we have a fabulous recipe with a fabulous story attached, and it's from the New York Times. You see, the New York Times is capable sometimes of being very delightful, and we're going to finish the story with some advice from the world's oldest person about how to live long and prosper. So, Phil, starting out today, please tell us this. This is a great story, very unusual, and got us. It influenced what we were watching this weekend. So, what happened, Phil?
So, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Scientists,
the Oscars to you,
and me, and the rest of us, they've put out a statement after they announced the shortlist. Or the nominations, I suppose they call them, put out a statement. They were conducting the review of the campaign procedures around this year's nominees. It is the Academy's goal to ensure that the awards competition is conducted in a fair and ethical manner, and we're committed to ensuring an inclusive awards process.
Very important.
What does that mean, inclusive? Anyway,
we know what inclusive means.
We are conducting a review of the campaign procedures around this year's nominees to ensure that no guidelines were violated and to inform us whether changes to the guidelines may be needed in a new era of social media and digital communications. Why would they need new guidelines? Why?
Something really awful must have happened, Phil.
Yes.
Did something awful happen, Phil?
Yes. Andrea Riseborough was nominated for Best Actress for the movie To Leslie. Now, you may not have heard of To Leslie.
The reason you probably haven't heard of the film To Leslie is that it made a whopping $28,000 in the box office.
They blame the
for context, by the way,
they blame the distribution company. No, but we watched To Leslie this weekend.
Fabulous.
It's an absolutely fabulous movie. Her performance is. I think who was it? Gwyneth Paltrow or one of those people said it's the best acting performance she's ever seen. I don't know about that, but it's pretty much up there. Like,
it's way up there.
This is a fantastic performance and a great movie. It's 2 hours long.
So the nomination of this woman, Miss Riseborough, for Best Actress has caused all this consternation.
Yes.
Very quickly, let's have a quick look at the trailer.
Leslie, how does it feel to win such a life-changing sum of money?
Oh, well, I feel a hell of a lot better than yesterday.
What do you plan to do with 190,000 smackaroos?
I don't know, maybe buy a house, buy something nice for my boy, just have a better life.
I want to be a good mama again.
She just blew all that money.
Yeah?
Chasing the pavement.
Things don't go the same way for any two people, and I don't think any less of you for having the problems you do.
Been down this road, not
You know what? It's my life.
Hey!
I'm not gonna do this again. Windows are dirty.
The town tries to avoid me like the plague, and my boy doesn't want to see me. He ain't never gonna speak to me again.
Don't walk away, you can count
Tell me I'm good.
on me. On me, yeah. Angels keep falling down on me.
So, why would the nomination of this woman cause all this
Consternation.
I think you get you get a little hint there. We are committed to ensuring an inclusive awards process. What does that mean, by the way?
Inclusive.
Like, if it's a secret vote, how can you have an inclusive awards process?
What does the word inclusive mean, though, Phil?
Means that we want everyone from all walks of life and colours to win, basically, I suppose. That's what they mean. So what you need to know is that no black women were nominated for the lead actress. As they say in the industry media, which is basically just repeating talking points, despite powerhouse performances from heralded contenders of like Daniel Deadwyler in Till and Viola Davis in The Woman King. So Till is obviously about Emmett Till, and The Woman King is about a black woman tribe in Africa who fight back.
So the real problem
aggressors.
is that neither of them were nominated for Best Actress.
Yes.
Consternation all round.
So they're trying to make it illegal to be a white woman and be nominated. If you take the place of a black woman, basically. And of course, it's not their place. So who knows what the next... But anyway, I think Oprah Winfrey is a producer until she's also on the governor's panel of the Academy Awards. They are determined. And it's not just us saying that. So the director is Michael Morris. Michael Morris is married to Mary McCormick. Mary McCormick has been in everything in Hollywood. She was in The West Wing.
You'd recognise her. You wouldn't recognise her name.
Yes, Alison Janney obviously was in The West Wing, and she's in the movie as well. And Mary McCormick just went to bat for her husband, phoned all her friends. And, you know, Jennifer Aniston had a private screening at her house, as did, I think, Gwyneth Paltrow. And, of course, if you're invited to a private screening at Jennifer Aniston's
I'd go.
house,
I'd go. Phil would go. Phil's very fond of her.
Yeah, but also, like, she fancies herself as an architect / interior design, so she's big into designing houses. So the whole thing would be just
delightful. Well, it would have been delightful. Yeah, it's the kind of thing we'd love to go to because we love looking at other people's houses.
Yeah. So you know, and as the guy in Puck says, but the shock nom has created a brewing bleep storm within the Academy because Riseborough seemingly pushed out Viola Davis, the Woman King, and Daniel Deadwyler Till. You know.
Oh my God! I'm just looking here, Phil. I imagine you're gonna give us that piece from the director of Till. What she said. That is
I don't want to mispronounce her name.
Chinonye. Chukwu.
Chukwu.
Chinonye.
She's the director of Till.
It's very easy to pronounce, Phil. I don't know what's wrong with you.
I know. She says, "We live in a world and work in industries that are so aggressively committed to upholding whiteness and perpetuating the unabashed misogyny towards black women." So that's the story. They're basically going to try and arrange it that black people or gay people or trans people or I don't know, whatever fits under the term of inclusive next year, they will have to be. There'll be quotas next. There'll be quotas next. I mean, they have already tried to game the system because it's very funny because they've let all these people in who are minorities who have no track record. I mean, it was a joke. They were letting in people who'd made a movie in 2012.
Sorry, you're saying letting people into the Academy who have voting rights then.
Yes, so it's kind of like the like the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. If you've ever picked up a laptop and you're a person of colour, you will be on the voting panel for the Golden Globes, even though you're not a real journalist. But I suppose that doesn't matter because they're real journalists anyway. In that, sorry, Diedrich, some of them are real. So now they're going to make it. There's going to be a quota. They try to game the system by stacking the voting panel. That didn't work. It's funny when you people still respect talent, and I also still respect being told by talented people who to vote for as well. By the way, I mean there was a pretty amazing campaign. People could learn a lot. Celebrity works, you know, and connections work. So, I mean, by the way, Oprah Winfrey didn't get off her bleep arse. I mean, Oprah Winfrey could have done all this. Oprah Winfrey could have had 30 people 10 nights in a row at her Montecito mansion or her LA mansion or wherever. She didn't do that.
It's a great movie, but it is very bleak. I have to say that. It's very bleak. And it's kind of, that was one of the things. It's 2 hours long, and I have to say, because you...
It was a happy ending, though.
I think we're not meant to say that. I think you're not meant to say that. That's called spoiling. That's called a spoiler. But basically, it's very bleak, but the girl is amazing, yes. Riceberg. And what's amazing, actually, to add to how amazing she is to realise that she's actually British from a working class background and what she does with that role. And it's funny, one of the things, I saw a quote from her, I don't know if you have, I think you have it there, Phelim, from her. But basically, she says something about... isn't that it there? Yeah. What appealed to you about the role? And she says, a character like Leslie, once she gets inside you, you can't really shake her off. All of us have been in the orbit of a Leslie. And I actually thought that. I think I said that to you. During watching the film the other night, I was like saying to Phelim, everyone has met this girl. Yes. Everyone's met a version of her. And it's incredibly sad, by the way. I mean, she really, and she does occupy the role. So she says, all of us have been in the orbit of a Leslie or felt very much like we identify with her and the way she lets down those she loves over and over again. So she's quite a large character to let you, whatever. And I don't mean for anyone. Anyway.
What I found is amazing. I read the director said, we made her really specific, right? And he says, it's funny, when you make a character like that really specific, people can relate to her. So when you try and make these characters amorphous, general characters, they're bland, right? But I mean, it's very American what her situation, that town, that white trash, that dive bars that she's in.
Amazing. She's amazing. And what's actually the other thing that I think we mentioned watching it as well was it kind of feels very Christian by the way,
Yes.
the film. It feels kind of, funny enough, bizarrely, quite conservative and quite Christian. And when you see the film, you'll understand why we're saying that.
Even though I don't think God's mentioned in it.
No, God's
at all.
not mentioned in it, but actually, funny enough, yes, religion does get mentioned, but in a negative way, because they talk about the town being full of religious people. But anyway, there's a character.
There's a
in it.
redemption.
There's a
story.
redemption aspect to it, and the guy. Yeah. Anyway, I won't spoil it for you, but there is. It's actually kind of, in a way. It's bizarre. Okay, I can't believe I'm going to say this. It is actually sort of slightly a feel-good movie, actually. I can't believe I said that. Given the fact that 1 hour and 50 minutes of it is extremely bleak.
Yes.
But then we have the last 10 minutes. But anyway, she is
amazing.
Amazing.
So I just want to...
And we would really defend the inclusion of her. Now, we haven't seen all the movies, but I would definitely... I can't imagine... she deserves to be there. There's no doubt
Viola
about
Davis, God,
anyway,
if you saw Viola,
move on.
Yeah, so anyway, I just wanted to say, so it's illegal to win an award if you're a white actress now, but you can shoot a female director from the Ukraine if you're Alec Baldwin, and SAG-AFTRA, the Actors Union, will
defend you.
Will defend you to the hilt. So
thank you for that.
We should talk some more about Alec Baldwin sometime, but it's I blow hot and cold on it. But ultimately, he's guilty of something. You can't point a gun at someone, pull the trigger, and walk free without some kind of punishment. I don't know what the punishment is.
Yes,
but I hope he gets a fair trial.
And in another story that we just wanted to bring you, Robert Bryce, our dear friend Robert Bryce, has a fantastic Substack, and we'd recommend you read Robert Bryce on Substack. You know that Robert Bryce has been on the show many times talking about energy, and he is an expert based out of Texas, and just an expert on everything to do with electricity and power and all of that. Mm-hmm. But he has this fabulous story that's been picked up everywhere, by the way. I've noticed a lot of people picking it up.
Yes.
But basically, he's talking about the billionaires behind the billionaires behind a new anti-fossil fuel NGO that's the biggest anti-fossil fuel NGO you've never heard of. I mean,
but also these are the people who are pushing the ban on gas stoves,
and they're also. Well, I'm kind of yes, and I've read the whole thing, by the way, because you'll have a good laugh about the ban on the gas stoves as well, which is another part of this thing. But this NGO is called the Climate Imperative Foundation. Yeah, I know, isn't it? Just rolls off the lips, doesn't it? And you've heard of it, of course. No one's heard of it, and the mainstream media have very bizarrely decided not to make a big fuss about it. The Climate Imperative Foundation. These anti-fossil fuel NGOs, by the way, they completely dominate in terms of money compared to the pro-fossil fuels, pro-nuclear side. But this one anyway, the Climate Imperative is the new, and this is from Robert, is the newest and richest anti-carbon, anti-natural gas group you've never heard of. So how rich is the Climate Imperative? So according to the latest report from GuideStar, the group took in $221 million in its first year of operation. As you know, Phelim and I operate a 501c3. And you can donate online at unreportedstoriesociety.com. Please do. Don't forget to do that. We would be very grateful. Thank you. We haven't really started our fundraising efforts this year, but we have a lot of great plans, which we will be bringing you very soon.
Yes, when you think about... 221 million. I mean,
in its first full year of operation, the Climate Imperative, which is less than 3 years old, is already taking in more cash than the Sierra Club, which has been around for obviously forever, which bills itself as the nation's largest and most influential grassroots environmental organisation. According to GuideStar, the Sierra Club only collected 180 million in its latest reporting year. So I'm going to put up on screen here. You can see it if you're watching this on YouTube. Just have a look at the of the money being collected by the pro-fossil fuels, pro-nuclear side, and the money being collected by the anti-fossil fuels, anti-nuclear side. And you can just see the numbers are dwarfed. And the total on the pro-nuclear, pro-fossil fuel side is basically 529 million, which is still an enormous amount of money. But it's completely dwarfed by the total on the anti side, which is basically 1.5 billion. 3 times the number. 3 times the number is being devoted. And so if you hear all these stories, by the way, about, fossil fuels and all that, and if you hear the latest story, which went everywhere about banning natural, gas appliances, and particularly gas stoves. It's this is where the money is coming from. And just a lovely detail, which I haven't actually included here, but I do remember from reading Robert's piece. And again, go to Robert Bryce on Substack. He makes a really good point that the Atlantic did a huge, massive story about these gas stoves, and bizarrely, the Atlantic is owned by none other than Steve Jobs' widow. And her name comes up again very interestingly. Right. So this is very interesting. So there's 6 people on the board of the, what did I call it? The Climate Imperative. 6 people. The most recognisable names on the 6-person board are Silicon Valley venture capitalist John Doerr, a name you've never heard of, by the way, John Doerr, and Lauren Powell Jobs. You've heard of her now, the widow of Apple CEO Steve Jobs. Forbes magazine gives us some helpful information here. Estimates that Doerr has a net worth of just 12.7 billion, and Forbes puts Jobs' net worth at 17.7 billion. But what's really nice about and Robert has loads of stuff, by the way.
They want to take the gas stoves from you.
Robert has a ton of stuff in this Substack, but the bit I really like is the hypocrisy. I'm just going to do this bit because really great stuff he has in the piece. The hypocrisy of the billionaires funding efforts to slash hydrocarbon use while they're consuming staggering amounts of hydrocarbons. So he quotes a Vanity Fair 2020 article. Michael Bloomberg is a huge funder, obviously, of the anti-fossil fuel movement. Michael Bloomberg owns 8 houses in New York State alone.
8 houses.
In New York State, though. 8. He also reportedly owns several properties in London, Florida, Colorado and Bermuda. Do you know the way you do? Thus, by the way, I don't mind that at all, as long as he keep his mind and nose out of other people's business.
Yes.
Thus, Bloomberg may own a dozen houses. How many of those houses have a gas stove? Robert says he'd make a wild guess and bet it's more than one.
I think it's all of them.
And according to Vanity Fair, while he
I wonder, does he even know where the kitchen is in most of
sure, listen. But he definitely has a staff.
Yes.
While he was mayor of New York, he was known to spend weekends at his house in Bermuda, travelling back and forth on private jets. And what is fueling those private jets? I'm guessing here it's probably not organic quino. This is Robert being naughty. Lauren Powell Jobs owns a Gulfstream G650, list price about 66 million, that burns about 500 gallons of jet fuel per hour. When not zooming around on her jet, she also spends time on her $120 million yacht called the Venus. That uses a wee bit of power too. Yes. Bezos, another anti-fossil fuel gazillionaire, reportedly owns 2 Gulfstreams because one, wouldn't be enough. Well, I suppose his girlfriend, she might be out shopping. She might... Lauren Sanchez. She's a lovely girl. She's a lovely girl.
Isn't he?
Do you know why she fell from? She just fell from because he's lovely.
It was his animal attraction. She just looked at him and she just went, I want that.
I want that. I want a bit of that now.
He's so good looking.
Well, he's very good looking. Look at him there now.
Look at
the lovely face on him. And
he's probably quite witty too, because billionaires, I find billionaires are very witty. Because I notice when there's groups of people around them, they're the funniest people in the room.
After Bezos flew to the 2021 climate meeting in Glasgow, a representative from the Bezos Earth Fund told Business Insider that was all well because the billionaire and here's stuff's really important, he uses sustainable aviation fuel and he offsets all carbon emissions from his flights. So, while they're doing all their offsets...
Can anyone tell me, actually, would you write in the comments below, what is sustainable aviation fuel? I'm dying to get onto our next
Phelim is dying to get onto our next, which, by the way, this is my little I was working on this over the weekend. I think this is just amazing.
This is a fantastic
the background to this next piece is that the UK's Charity Commission, what happened... So, recently, there was a hearing.
Well, we need to explain what the UK's Charities Commission is. So, the UK's Charities Commission is the organisation that regulates charities, 501c3s, 501c4. Now, they're not called
that.
In the UK. So they're called charities, right? And the background is there was a group called the LGBT Alliance, which was granted...
That's Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual Alliance, was granted charitable status by the Charity Commission in 2021.
Nothing controversial
there. So the LGBT Alliance have a dispute with the LGBT people because they believe... Particularly in schools, by the way, they believe that the trans lobbyists and trans activists are trying to trans the gay out of
Yes.
young people.
Yes. So people who are gay, they're being told that they're actually trans, young people. Also, they are concerned about safe spaces for women, such as prisons, domestic violence places.
The LGBs are.
LGBs, because it happened there in Scotland.
Just now.
Several rapists literally put on a skirt and a wig and said, "I'm a woman now," and were sent to women's prisons.
Which is where they'd love to be.
No hormones, no medical, no surgery, nothing. Just put on a skirt and a wig.
So what happened then was
so they're campaigning to highlight these dangers of the trans lobby, right, and also to protect the LGBT people and to protect women. So
this is a first, by the way, in the UK. This is the first time one charity has tried to strip the legal status from another.
Yeah,
so it's kind of unusual.
So they complained, the LGBT, the trans people, complained to the Charities Commission saying these people are evil, basically, and they shouldn't have charitable status. Now, charitable status is very useful. People will donate to you. They can get tax deductions. You have certain protections. Charitable status is a very important thing. So they had a hearing, and I don't even, I imagine the Charities Commission had to go back into their archives to work out what does a hearing look like. Who do we get? Because do they have a procedure? Anyway,
and fabulously,
yes,
the transcripts for this hearing have been made public.
Yes.
And so today, for one day only, or for the, appearing today, Phelan McAleer is playing the role of, who are you playing the role of?
I'm playing the barrister for the LGBT Alliance. These are the people who think the trans are out of order, and you're playing.
And I'm playing the role of is it Paul? I'm playing the role of Paul Roberts, who's the chief executive for Consortium.
Yeah. And here's his little bio. Read his bio. I'll read his bio for you.
You read
Paul Roberts has over 18 years experience working in the LGBT plus voluntary sector. Paul leads on the strategic direction of the organisation, working with staff, team, board and members to ensure Consortium stays community focused and LGBT plus issues with a range of stakeholders including government and the wider voluntary sector. Paul's background is within community development and he has a passion for connecting communities together and giving people space to share their collective knowledge and experience. In his spare time,
I like this.
In your spare time, Paul is a bit of a DIY renovating geek and loves taking a blank canvas of a room, turning it into a livable space with a hint of craziness thrown in for good measure, and much to the eye rolling of his partner Jack. He lives in Nottingham, but during non-COVID times, ! Loves to explore as much of the world as possible.
He likes to travel.
Exclamation
He
point.
likes to travel.
I
all right.
love to travel.
All right, Phelan.
So you're Paul Roberts.
I'm Paul Roberts, and you are the QC.
Yes, I'm. Casey.
You're the KC. Oh gosh, bless us. King's Council. King's Council representing the LGB.
Do I get one of those wigs?
Stop it.
I want one of those a robe.
Go. Start with your first question, please.
So, just thinking back to the example that we're looking at the bottom of paragraph 10 of your witness statement about a trans gay man being included in gay men's organisation. When you say somebody who identifies as a man, that covers it, doesn't it? Quite a wide range. And it's not about whether or not a person has gone through any medical transition, is it?
No, that's correct.
And it's right, isn't it, that many trans people don't go through any kind of medical transition at all?
Yes, that is correct. For many reasons.
Yes, and others have taken some medical stance, like taking hormones, but they don't have any surgery.
Yes.
And we've just discussed that it's not about whether the person has a gender recognition certificate from the government either, because the vast majority of people don't who are trans, do they?
That's correct.
So what it is about self-identification.
Yes.
If somebody says they're a man, then they are a man.
Yes.
Regardless of their physical body or their legal status.
Yes.
And that's because your belief is that trans men are men.
That's correct.
By that, you don't mean that trans men should be treated as men. What you mean is that they are literally men, yes?
I'm saying that trans men are men and should be treated as men.
Yes, but you don't...
As are trans women are women and should be treated as women.
Fine. But you don't only mean they should be treated as men. You mean they are literally men, and therefore should be treated as men, don't you?
I'm not sure that's what I'm saying. I'm saying that trans men are men and should be recognised as men, so treated as men.
Yes, right. Recognised as men. So they are literally men.
Well,
it follows, doesn't it, from what you're saying, that they're literally men.
There would be differences, but they should. But my understanding of the law is that a trans man is a man and should be treated as a man.
Well, what do you mean there are differences? There are differences between trans men and men? Is that what you're saying?
So, a trans man might have ovaries. And therefore, there would be some services that a trans man would need that a trans woman wouldn't need, and vice versa.
Right.
But I would still consider that my interpretation, my understanding of the Equality Act is that they are a man.
But you keep coming back to the Equality Act, but you've accepted that you don't have legal expertise in that. But let's talk about it not in a legal context, but in just an everyday treatment context. Your view now seems to be that a trans man is literally a man because you say is literally a man because you say there's a difference between trans men and men.
I believe that trans men are men and should be treated as men.
Right. And they are men even though there isn't any objective difference between them and women. Is that right?
Can you say that again?
Trans men are men, even though there isn't any objective difference between them and women.
I would disagree.
Oh, on what basis?
So, I believe in self-identification. So, if a trans man is a man, then they are living as a man and are recognised as a man.
But self-identification is a subjective state, isn't it? That's about what you think about who you are.
Yes.
So it's not objective, is it?
Yes.
So there isn't any objective difference between a self-identifying trans man who has taken no medical steps or has got a gender recognition certificate and a woman.
I don't believe that it's as simple as that binary notion.
Well, on your view, the only difference between people who are literally men and people who are literally women is their own subjective view of themselves, isn't it?
You keep using the word literally.
Okay, actually. I mean actually. People who are men, the only difference between men and women is the subjective view that people have of themselves, in your view.
I believe that trans men are men and should be treated as a man, and that is my understanding of what the Equality Act says.
So I'm going to use the words male body to refer to the bodies of people who are born male, and the phrase female body to refer to those who are born female. I'm going to use those in the next question. We've seen that in order to be a member of the consortium, which you're part of, an organisation has to accept that a person with a female body could be a gay man. Do you accept that?
Yes.
And you believe that it's transphobic to say otherwise?
Yes. If the person identifies as a man or identifies as a woman, then they should be treated.
That's not what I put to you. What I put to you is this. An organisation, to get into the consortium, has to accept that a person with a female body can be a gay man. You believe, don't you, that it's transphobic to contradict this?
I believe that LGBT services should be inclusive of trans people.
Look, I'm going to put the question to you again, Mr. Roberts. An organisation has to accept that a person with a female body can be a gay man. And in your view, it is transphobic to say otherwise. Yes?
If somebody is being denied access to a service that they should be able to access, then yes.
Do you think it's transphobic to say a person with a female body cannot be a gay man?
Can you say that again?
Do you think it's transphobic to say that a person with a female body cannot be a gay man?
Yes.
Right. And that is just a little sample.
That concludes this little tiny snippet from one day of that crazy tribunal. And it's hard to know what to say after you've read all of that.
We'll put the full transcripts in the show notes.
Yeah,
actually.
we'll put a link up to where you can read all of the transcripts. It's kind of extraordinary. And by the way, I have to say hats off to J.K. Rowling, who actually alerted me to this by putting it up on Twitter. She's been tweeting out little small snippets of this tribunal, which of course, you talk about rolling of the eyes and scratching of the head. I mean, kind of extraordinary, but very interesting. Some of the things that were brought up here, and we're going to have. We're going to have another look at this. By the way, I think we're going to have another look at this and bring more of this to you next week, because they did bring up some very interesting issues. By the way, and it's kind of one of the things that comes up in this particular piece is this notion that, because remember back in the day there was a whole problem with conversion, conversion therapy, conversion, big problem with conversion, of converting people who were gay into being straight, basically.
Yes.
Now gay people are very upset with the trans movement, because the trans movement, they say, are doing exactly that they're converting people from, they're saying, no, you're not gay, you're in the wrong body. And that's one of their objections, but it's not their only objection. And some of the other stuff is very fascinating, brings up some very sticky issues.
I feel I didn't do the KC justice. I should have put on my best
very British
accent.
Phelan will bring his A game to this to our next bit.
Those kind of glasses, kind of half glasses, looked over them. And
we might have to. We might have to be in costume.
Yes.
All right. Over the weekend, then there was
in other news.
Over the weekend, there was
another mass shooting.
Mass shooting in Los Angeles, which didn't get as much attention as the other mass shootings. Bizarre.
Why is that?
So this mass shooting happened in Benedict Canyon,
and of course it happened in an upscale white area.
Very, very posh Benedict Canyon, by the way. Gorgeous Benedict Canyon. So,
as the San Diego Union Tribune called it, upscale Benedict Canyon.
At least 3 people are dead and 4 wounded. We've now learned three women, and we've now learned that the 3 women all 3 were from the Chicago area. One of the things that's very kind of interesting is I've managed to find the photograph of one of the women. By the way, a mother of 3, by the way, who was shot dead. The other 2 women, photographs are still not available, and we're questioning why that is at this point. Their names are out there, and yet we don't have photographs of the 3 women, showing them together.
There's no interest in the story at all. Like, it's just fallen into a memory hole, and the reason is because this was when I heard it in Benedict Canyon, and they called it a gathering. That's code in LA for it's an Airbnb that someone has rented, probably under a false name, and then what they do is it's a nice posh house up in the hills.
Lovely.
They have a party,
and they charge people in,
and
things get out of hand,
and then gangbangers come. And because gangbangers need to party just like the rest of us, in fact, more so.
Absolutely. And, after a hard weekend of gangbanging.
And they killed 3 women. Sitting in a car.
And one of them, as I said, this photograph of just one woman was showing it there.
3 kids.
3 kids, awful, right? But they're not focusing much.
We need to explain one crucial detail.
Correct.
These women are African American. And the 4 people injured are African American.
Slow down, Phil. We actually don't know the identity of the other 2 women. We know that one woman was black.
True.
But it's curious to me, by the way, that the Chicago newspapers have printed the names of the women. There's one photograph, as I said, available out
Nobody
there
cares.
showing that, but they're not. And I think that's we're going to make the wild guess that all 3 of the women were African American and potentially were hurt by another African American, and that actually killed, and that may be the reason why there's not an awful lot of tension,
because it doesn't fit a narrative
on the actual identity of the women. But here's what I think is really it's an awful tragedy. It's dreadful, particularly that woman. I mean, the one woman that we do know a little bit more about, who's a mother of 3, just awful, and the beautiful children. Look at the lovely, gorgeous children who are going to grow up now without a mum. But what I think was really funny was not only the San Diego newspaper and also the LA Times both found time in their breathless reporting of this event to do a little bit of classy, what do you call it?
Class warfare.
Class warfare.
In fact, they
a lot of it.
If
actually.
they wasted, I would disagree. They did no breathless coverage of it. They sort of tried to bury the coverage, but in the small number of articles they wrote, they wasted no opportunity to get in a bit of class warfare. As if that, there's 3 women lying dead in a car, 4 people injured.
I think we should focus on them.
Yes.
But instead of that, here's what they focus on. So basically, these reporters are up there at the scene, and here's what they say, So shortly after 9 a.m, a knot of people gathered at the tape blocking off Ellison Drive, wondering how they were going to get to their jobs in the homes along the blocked off street. So when was this happening, Phelim?
This happened on Saturday. This reporter is, the 9 a.m. is Saturday morning.
So this is Saturday morning, and how are they going to get to their jobs on Saturday morning? And this is a residential area. So who are these people? One moment. I don't live here, just coming for work. You hear the way
broken
English, right? Said a woman who when do you hear this? I mean, I love this. Said a woman who had hauled a red vacuum cleaner to the top of the hilly street, only to find the last few steps of her route blocked. After a short conversation, a police officer lifted the tape, because obviously this was an emergency, lifted the tape to allow her and another woman the other woman was carting 2 shopping bags of cleaning supplies through. Another woman, this is a 3rd cleaner now, wrapped in a cardigan and headband, holding back greying hair, looked down the street toward her employer's house. Her employer's dog, a sturdy pull dog, pulled on a pink leash at her feet. Her employer wasn't home, said the woman, who declined to give her name. I worked yesterday, 5 o'clock. By the way, this is what she said again, broken English. I worked yesterday, 5 o'clock, and everything is fine, she said. She was surprised to come to work this morning and come across this scene in an otherwise quiet neighbourhood. Another person, further on in another story, my dog walker woke me at 6:30 and said, "Oh my God, are you okay?" the woman said. Then I realised it was way more serious than someone getting their jewels stolen. So now you understand the kind of neighbourhood it is.
Yes.
But what we really loved about this was...
by the way, can I just remind you, there are 3 women under 30 dead.
Yes.
There's at least 3 children motherless.
You could wait a few days. You could wait a few days to do your class warfare stuff, maybe.
Yeah,
at
poor
LA
immigrants.
Times.
And by the way, this reminds me, this reminds me of the time we were in Indonesia and we were outside I think it was a Nike factory, one of those big factories.
I know what you're
because we were looking for a woman, and you were handing out flyers saying, "Do you know this woman?" A long story, a good happy story, and we got talking to somebody who worked in the factory, and the factory, otherwise known by the West as a sweatshop. Sweatshop, yeah. So the factory, you worked in the factory 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and some French guy came in, a French manager came in and said, "Oh, this, 5 days a week. You know what would be better if we made it 12-hour shifts and you only worked 3 days." And then the rest of then you have 4 days with your family or whatever.
Uproar.
They were almost a riot because everyone loved the factory because it had air conditioning, it had showers.
Mostly had air conditioning.
It had canteens. It had community. It had it had. When you think about where they came from, they loved being there. But I'm not going to speculate about these women's life. But I'm going to speculate. I think they might like going to the house in Benedict Canyon.
The beautiful, beautiful home. But I'm not finished, by the way. So not finished. And again, as Phelim says, the thing about this story that's amazing is you got 3 women dead. There's 3 women lying dead in a house. And here's what the LA Times are focused on. So here's another part of the same story. While Benedict Canyon once had a rustic air. Wonder what a rustic air is, by the way. I have no idea what that is. Some residents rode horses through the streets. And one of the residents that was talking to them, when Gilman moved in. The neighbourhood has been transformed by investors. Evil people. Investors building 10,000 square foot homes to sell or rent. Oh God, because building a house, what a crime.
Does this mean Gilman, right, is going to
make a load of money?
No, Gilman is going to sell her or his house for
huge amount of money.
No, for a lot less, because he's obviously appalled by the investors coming in and selling for large.
Gilman said he saw a listing for a home on the street where the shooting occurred, whose rent was $100,000 a month.
Okay, Gilman. I have a solution to you, Gilman. Rent your house for $10,000 a month.
There you go, Gilman. But yeah, you don't take the money, Gilman. You just go ahead and say, yeah, actually, you know what? Move the homeless in there, Gilman, because obviously you care an awful lot about this stuff. But I just think, again, this is what the LA Times took. They were just delighted actually to be in Benedict Canyon and to get a chance to sling mud at people who they wish they were. And actually, mostly this is based on jealousy. I'd love to live in Benedict Canyon. And paternalism. But I know it's also like...
Racism.
I wish I could... it's that thing that you and I have talked about before, Phelan, but New York Times are fascinated by wealth. They're absolutely fascinated by it. And also kind of just jealous, by the way.
So I just want to say that the dead women were Nina Davis, 29, of Bolingbrook, Illinois, Destiny Sims, 26, of Buckeye, Arizona, previously
Chicago.
Yeah. And Iana Hutton, 33, of Chicago.
So they're all from Chicago.
Maybe you should have focused on that, Mr. LA Times reporter and Mr. San Diego Tribune reporter and all the rest of them. So give me some good news, Anna.
So we're coming to the recipe of the week, and this recipe, and it's 100% stolen. This is all completely stolen from the New York Times, and I have
a great artist borrow.
A great artist borrow, but in a way it's not from the New York Times because it's from someone who wrote to the New York Times, and they wrote about Katharine Hepburn's brownies, and I think the letter is just fabulous. So this letter was written to the New York Times in 2003. And I thought it was delightful, and I thought I would share it with you because I think it's so nice. Read the death of Katharine Hepburn last Sunday. So again, this is 2003. For many decades, my father used to walk across town to do his food shopping on 2nd Avenue. He often shopped at Gristdeeds, around the corner from Miss Hepburn's townhouse on East 49th Street.
Can I say something? The correct pronunciation of that name is Hepburn, because my grandmother was a Hepburn, spelled the same way. In Northern Ireland, we call them Hepburns. And I think in Scotland, they call them Hepburns. It's only when they came to America, they called Hepburns. Okay, go ahead.
So back to the father. One day, he suddenly came face to face with Miss Hepburn, who was also picking up groceries. He acknowledged her with a nod, and she responded in kind. He began thinking of her as a neighbour. In 1983, my senior year at Bryn Mawr, Miss Hepburn's alma mater, I was frustrated and doing poorly, and at Christmas break, I decided to quit. I had the romantic notion of running away to Scotland to write screenplays. My father was frantic. My mother had died 2 years before, leaving him with all the responsibility for his headstrong daughter. He knew that Miss Hepburn had gone through her own struggles at Bryn Mawr, so he wrote her a letter asking her to intervene. She's a great admirer of yours, and perhaps she'll listen to you, he wrote. On the way to the grocery store, he dropped the letter in her mail slot. At 7:30 the next morning, the phone woke me up. I answered it and heard the famous voice crackling with command. Is this the young woman who wants to quit Bryn Mawr? I said it was. What a damn stupid thing to do, she snapped. She went on to give me a lively lecture, the gist of which was that I had to finish my studies, get my degree, and after that I could do what I wanted to do. There was no arguing with her imperiousness. Then she said she wanted to meet us for tea. Imagine, Katharine Hepburn. The day of our appointment was grey and wintry. Walking the long blocks to Turtle Bay, my father and I didn't speak much. I felt as if we were about to meet the Queen. Miss Hepburn greeted us warmly. With casual hauteur, she provided us with tea and some of her famous brownies. Though she was in her 70s, she had a youthful look, enhanced by her girlish clothes, a turtleneck, a black cardigan and shabby khaki green pants. We talked about many things, including Bryn Mawr. She said she was miserable there and still had nightmares about it, but she was glad she went. At the end of the afternoon, she told me in a rather grim tone, "You're smart." It was a compliment, but also an admonition not to be foolish in the future. My father was invited to visit her a few times after that. Once he had heard that she was recovering from a serious car accident, and he stopped by to drop off a package of homemade brownies and a get well note. To his surprise, he was ushered in and invited into her boudoir, where she greeted him in her nightgown. She sampled his brownies. "Too much flour," she declared. She then rattled off her own recipe, which he hastily wrote down. And don't overbake them. They should be moist, not cakey. Now, Phelan.
Yeah, I apologise.
I'll always be grateful to Miss Hepburn for making me stick it out at Bryn Mawr and for giving me these rules to live by. 1. Never quit. 2. Be yourself. And 3. Don't put too much flour in your brownies.
I would add 4. Don't overcook them.
And this is Katharine Hepburn's brownie recipe. Are you ready? 1/2 cup of cocoa, 1 stick of butter, 2 eggs, 1 cup of sugar, 1/4 cup of flour, 1 cup broken up walnuts or pecans, 1 teaspoon vanilla, a pinch of salt. So you preheat the oven, it's really fast. and we made it together yesterday. Really nice. Preheat the oven to 325 degrees. Melt the butter in a saucepan with the cocoa and stir until smooth. Then remove that from the heat. Let it cool down a bit. Mix in the eggs one at a time. Add sugar, flour, nuts, vanilla and salt, and you bake it for 40 minutes.
Well, the nuts, by the way, you did a thing with the nuts.
Oh, very good with the
nuts.
I mean, everyone knows this, but in case you don't know this, I mean, obviously, put the nuts into a little plastic bag like that, a Ziploc bag, and then just come along. And we actually used, what did we use to break them up, Phil?
We used the homeless hammer.
Get the nuts here, little bag. And the best thing to do with the nuts is... We used the homeless hammer. Explain where we got the homeless hammer from.
Well,
Phil.
I had a very, very nice shacket.
He did. A shacket, which is a cross between a shirt and a jacket.
Yes. And funny enough, I got it washed.
It's a long story,
Christmas,
Phil.
and it was kind of ruined, but it still was a nice shacket. And I put it in the back of the car to bring it back to the shop saying, this was ruined after one wash. What's the story?
Give me my money
And then
back.
our car was broken into by homeless people who took the shacket
but left
a hammer.
So now we have a hammer. Yeah, the homeless hammer. So we used the homeless hammer to break up the walnuts.
Welcome to Venice, by the way.
And bake. They're saying bake. You know, in Miss Hepburn's recipe, it says bake for 40 minutes. The problem with baking, by the way, and ovens is you know they're all different. So I would say in our oven it should have been 30 minutes. We did 35 minutes, and I think they were more done than Miss Hepburn would appreciate.
Yes.
But here's what they look like. Delicious. We served them with a bit of pouring cream. Apparently, that's not what Americans do, by the way.
Oh.
But anyway, the woman who wrote the letter was called Heather Henderson from St. Paul, Minnesota. And she basically wrote that letter to the New York Times. And the recipe is part of the New York Times recipes and is one of the most popular recipes that they have. And actually, it's incredibly easy to make. And one of the ways to know if your brownies are cooked is to just put a toothpick in. You know, and if it comes out clean with just a little bit of crumbs on it, tiny bit of crumbs on it, they're done. So I actually think, you know, keep a good eye after 25 minutes. Keep a good eye on them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, depending
and
finally, I just love this. I came across this the other day. The oldest woman alive says she made it to 115 years old, and she has some advice. So she survived both world wars and the 1918 flu pandemic by avoiding toxic people. She says she attributes her longevity to order, tranquility, good connection with family and friends, contact with nature, emotional stability, no worries, no regrets, lots of positivity, and staying away from toxic people, according to the Guinness Book of Records.
If only.
That's the problem.
If only we could do that.
If only we could do that. And somebody wrote the other day, thank you, whoever it was. I'm sorry, I don't have your letter right in front of me right now, but I know Magda sent it to us, that I don't mention how many, when I make food, I never say how many is it for. The best rule of thumb for anyone looking back at any of the recipes is I have always thought I have I've always behaved as though I have 6 children. We don't have 6 children, but I do cook as though there are 6 children. So you can pretty much be sure that there's always about 6. It's definitely going to do 6 to 10 people, everything that I cook.
Yes.
But I will be more careful in future. In terms of those brownies, it's enough we brought them to a game day. We went to game day. We went to watch, who did we watch, Philip, playing?
49ers.
The 49ers. But we went anyway to our friend's house, and I brought the brownies, which were very popular.
There was 5 people there, and there was plenty of brownies left over. So.
Yes.
So that probably serves.
And the walnuts are so
7
nice.
or 8.
The walnuts are so nice.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's us for this week. We will be in touch, and, remember that you can donate to the unreportedstoriesociety.com.
Indeed.
Unreportedstoriesociety.com. And we have a lot of very exciting plans for this
Yes,
year,
we do.
which we're bringing to you as soon as we possibly can. But honestly, you won't be disappointed.
Yes.
Thank you.
All the best. Bye.
Bye.